49ers are going to beat the Seahawks this weekend, and it's not going to be close. Hey, my name is Sammy J Reacts. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm going to be talking about the 49ers and Seahawks game. But before we get into the video, I do want to ask if you could please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're feeling my vibe, hit that bell notification button to never miss one of my uploads so we can continue talking about what we love to watch. And that means 49er football, baby. The Seahawks are coming into Levi Stadium looking to avenge their 2 losses in the regular season, as this is going to be the third meeting between the two teams. But the Seahawks are going to have their hands full with the 49ers as they come in riding a 10-game winning streak, and they've already beaten the Seahawks twice in the regular season, holding Seattle under 14 points in both games, winning the overall point differential in both games 48-20, which is essentially what the Niners have been doing to the entire league, as they had the #1 scoring defense in the league. Going over the first matchup against Seattle, we got to go all the way back to week 2 and some painful memories, as that was a game that Trey Lance started, got injured and went out for the year, which is when Jimmy Garoppolo stepped in, did his job, ran the offense well, and the defense really just dominated. But we can't really look at that matchup just because there's been so many different personnel changes. But they did end up dominating that first matchup 27-7. But if we look more recently at week 15, that game's going to give us a better indication of how this game's going to play out, as that was Brock Purdy's first ever road start in Seattle. The Niners defense only gave up 13 points in that game, and one of them really came in garbage time to Noah Fant, so it was really 21-6 in that game. And Seattle really couldn't move the ball at all. The Niners held them to 4 of 13 on third downs, which is incredibly dominant. The Niners did an excellent job in stopping Kenneth Walker to make sure that he couldn't do anything in the run game, which led to Geno Smith really just checking it down to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett were both held under 10 yards per catch, but particularly the matchup between Mooney Ward and DK Metcalf, as he was giving them fits the entire game. Metcalf was frustrated, you could tell. He held him to 7 receptions and 55 yards on 9 targets. So that's going to be one of the key matchups to watch this upcoming Saturday, because you know DK Metcalf is going to want to get that get back. I'm going to look for Seattle to find ways to match him up against Yammador Lenoir, just because he's so much more physically intimidating than him, and Lenoir has been struggling recently with these bigger receivers. But I'm sure D'Amico Ryan is going to be anticipating that, and he'll make adjustments. I think the biggest issue for Seattle on the offensive side of the football is going to be Nick Bosa. I mean, he was just a demon in both matchups. He had 18.5 sacks on the season, 3 of those against Seattle, 2 in week 2, 1 in week 15. And Nick Bosa was just a sack monster this year. He had 1 sack in 13 of 16 games, which is really impressive. And that's also why I think Nick Bosa is going to be the defensive player of the year, just because he's been so dominant. So now we got to talk about what's really changed with both teams since last they met, as one team is surging and one team is kind of sputtering. And Seattle fans, this is where you might want to have your earmuffs, as your offense was once explosive, is now sputtering out of proportions. Since playing the Niners in week 15, their offense has been kind of struggling to score points, only scoring over 20 points once against the Jets, which was impressive, but since then, 3 of their 4 games they've been held under 20 points. And mainly since starting off so hot, Geno Smith has cooled way down since the beginning of the year. Entering Thanksgiving weekend, Geno Smith had only thrown 5 interceptions and was actually having a great touchdown to interception ratio up to that point, but since Thanksgiving, he's thrown 6 interceptions. He might need to start writing those people back. Geno threw 2 picks against the depleted Rams defense, and his play has been affecting those around him, mainly DK Metcalf, as DK hasn't scored a touchdown in 4 straight games, and in the last 2 games alone, on 13 targets, he's only caught 4 balls for 43 yards, and you can see him visibly frustrated on the field. But it is a good thing that they got Tyler Lockett back from that hand injury, because he's kind of been picking up the slack, and he's been in great sync with Geno Smith. Lockett scored a touchdown last week, and he's been their most reliable wide receiver, and honestly, I look for them to try to attack Yammador Lenoir, but honestly, I'm not entirely worried about that. I think Yammador Lenoir matches up better with a receiver like Tyler Lockett, as opposed to someone like DK Metcalf, who's like 6'5", against Yammador Lenoir, who's 5'9". And they also got Kenneth Walker going back a little bit. He's got 100 yards rushing in 3 straight games since that 49er game, so it's kind of funny that, you know, he hasn't had 100 rushing yards since he last played the 49ers, so look for the Niners to try to break that streak too. And don't get me wrong, Kenneth Walker has been probably their hottest offensive player, but the problem is he's going up against a 49ers defense that hasn't allowed a 100-yard rusher to a single running back. And in 2022, the 49ers defense is holding opposing running backs to 3.3 yards per carry, which is first in the NFL if you were wondering. And that has a lot to do with how dominant the defensive line has been, but also don't forget the Niners have the best trio of linebackers in Azeez Al-Shaair, Dre Greenlaw, and of course, Fred Warner. And let's say Seattle does find a way to have success in the run game, there's still another problem for them: their defense and the Niners' offense. The Niners have put up 30-plus points in 5 of their last 6 games, and since Brock Purdy has been the starting quarterback, Niners are averaging 33 points per game. And yes, Purdy has been a big reason for that. In the 5 games that he started, the Niners are 5-0. He has a 107.3 rating. He's thrown 13 touchdowns against only 3 interceptions, and he's throwing 8.1 yards per attempt, and he's thrown at least 2 touchdowns in every single game since taking over as the starting quarterback. He's had a 100 passer rating in 4 of his last 5 games, so I'd say that's pretty damn good. And don't get me wrong, I love me my Brock Purdy. Purdy, but don't forget who he's playing with. Deebo Samuel returned in week 18 to add to the stable of yards after catch monsters we have in George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell. Everyone on this team gets yak. Kittle has reemerged as a dominant presence ever since Purdy took over as quarterback, and he finished the year with 11 touchdown catches, and he was just dominant in both matchups against Seattle, particularly week 15, which is the most relevant one. And obviously the godsend himself, Christian McCaffrey. Since joining the 49ers, it's been incredible, and the last time they played Seattle, he had 108 rushing yards and 30 receiving yards. Just what a double threat. And Seattle doesn't do good against these dual threat running backs. They've actually allowed 4.7 yards per carry to running backs in 2022, which is tied for 24th in the league. But on top of that, they've also allowed over a 100-yard passer rating to running backs in 2022, which is 27th in the league. And guess what Christian McCaffrey is good at? He's good at running and catching. And to even compound that, they also allowed over a 100-yard passer rating to tight ends in 2022, which was also tied for 24th, which is why George Kittle has been so dominant the last time they met. So good luck with that, because the 49ers love their running backs, love their tight end. But one thing I will give Seattle credit for has been their coverage against wide receivers. They've only allowed an 87.3 passer rating, which is 13th in the league, and they've gotten 14 interceptions, which is tied for 12th. And it's all thanks to their two rookie cornerbacks, Michael Jackson, no, not the hee, and Tariq Woolen, who has been a damn steal for them. He's been a stud. And in that week 15 matchup, the Niners didn't really do much throwing to the wide receiver position anyway, so you know what they're going to try to exploit in this matchup again. And I know there's been a couple of big discussion points about this game made throughout the week. One, there's going to be inclement weather, but at the end of the day, I always think the better team has to win. It's an even match on the field. It doesn't matter if it's raining or not. And sure, you could try to make the argument that they lost because of the rain against the Bears, but I mean, to me, that was just week one, weird things happen, and the rain doesn't help. But this is a completely different team than then, and I expect them to dominate no matter the weather. Nobody's raining on the Niners parade, not even the actual weather itself. Now, another thing that people have been pointing out is that this is going to be Brock Purdy's first ever playoff start. He's going to be feeling the pressure. He might succumb to that pressure, might throw a bunch of interceptions, and I just don't see that. This kid is wired differently. You see it in his demeanor. He loves playing football. He's not scared of the moment. Everyone trusts him. The defensive players, Kyle, the players around him on the offense, and you can see that in the play calling itself. Kyle feels confident. He's a smart kid. He's tough as nails. And he's pretty talented for his size. Could he make mistakes this coming Saturday? Yeah, for sure. But I think the 49ers have a good enough team to overcome those mistakes if they even happen. And he's already shown when he makes mistakes this season that he overcomes them and plays even better following said mistake. So at least in my mind, there's really no concerns with Brock Purdy's play. He's been playing under pressure these past couple weeks. I think that Raiders game was really big to get under his belt. That felt like a playoff game, and he performed extremely well in that game. Plus, he's got some of the best pure football players on that offense with him and the best play caller in the NFL in Kyle Shanahan. So, no worries there. And I know Pete Carroll's been saying like, oh man, unfortunately we got to play the Niners and whatnot. And everyone's kind of been making a big deal about how that doesn't look well for the Seahawks. But he knows what he's doing. We know what he's doing. He's trying to fire up the troops. He's trying to create his own bulletin board material for his players to be inspired, motivated, and get fired up to play the Niners. And hey, maybe it works. Maybe some of these players who have been playing subpar pick their game up and they play above their expectations. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's really not going to matter. They could give us their best punch. They could go up 10 points, 7 points in this game, and I still will have the utmost confidence that the 49ers are going to win this game. They're going to win it handedly, and they're going to continue showing the NFL why everyone should be scared of the 49ers. So honestly, going through all of these matchups, this is really just a mismatch, and especially with this being the 49ers at home at Levi's Stadium, I don't see how Seattle's going to come in there and beat them, especially when you consider the fact that the Niners got to get that revenge for 2013's playoffs. But don't get me wrong, this is the NFL. Any given Sunday is a saying for a reason, right? But I'm going to start a new saying for the 49ers, because every given Sunday, the damn 49ers are going to be physical, they're going to dominate you, and they're going to go on their way to winning the Super Bowl this year. You heard it here first. And at the end of the day, for this particular matchup, I just think the 49ers have too much for Seattle to handle, and they're going to win handedly. And advancing in this tournament into the divisional round, and then hopefully the NFC Championship game, and then the Super Bowl. But that's going to do it for me. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, though. Who do you think is going to win this matchup? What are your game picks? What are your predictions? Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Just give me all your comments. I want to know. I'm curious. And I do ask that if you did like this video, please hit that thumbs up button. It really helps me out. And if you are feeling my vibe, you might as well like and subscribe, baby. But with that, I leave you with a bang bang Niner gang. Peace, love, and positivity, everybody. Peace. Hey, real quick, watch Elijah Mitchell turn 34 in a roadkill. God!